Welcome, everybody. This is Brother Eric Nelson, and I want to thank you for joining me today. This is going to be hopefully a fairly short video. It's actually an addendum to a video that I did entitled Bible Prophecy 101, the Four Trees of Israel. If you've not viewed that video, I urge you to go over to rumble.com and type into the search engine Bible Prophecy 101, the Four Trees of Israel. I also have several video libraries, but probably the main one is on BitChute at bitchute.com, bitchute.com /your two kind, YOUR, the number two, KIND. Those video libraries are there to be a blessing to your life. I believe that life is a quest for truth, and we honor God by seeking out truth in all areas of life: mentally, spiritually, physically, socially, emotionally, financially, politically, etc. So if you get a chance, head on over and be blessed. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to offer some supplemental material in regard to the video that I created entitled Bible Prophecy 101, the Four Trees of Israel. And I'm going to utilize materials from two articles I wrote several years ago in reference to Isaiah the 14th chapter and Ezekiel the 28th chapter. If you are a serious Bible student, then you have heard what I'm about to say. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Thou wast in Eden, the garden of God. I will cause fire to come from the midst of thee. There's even a reference to the stones of fire. Well, in both of those perspective articles, I did answer all of those questions with footnotes. For whatever reason, these chapters have always been taken out of context and mixed together. And these two chapters alone in that regard have caused more confusion to understanding Bible prophecy and even the Bible in a very general sense. As a result of mixing those two chapters together, we have some of the worst exegeses in Bible history. Most of us have heard things such as this, that the devil, his name was Lucifer before he fell, then his name became Satan. He was a alleged covering over the throne of God, and he reflected God's glory. In other words, the devil used to be God's right-hand man, and then he got full of himself and was tossed out of heaven, and then his name was changed from Lucifer to Satan. I've also heard my entire life that he was the director over God's choir, and then as a result, he would want to pervert the music on planet Earth. Well, I'm sure he had a hand in that, but that still does not excuse that very bad exegesis. Okay, first of all, the devil's name is not Satan. The reason we know that is because the word Satan is not a name. It's a distinction, like the sergeant or the general. When you read your Bible, it very well could be in reference to the devil, depending on the context or not. Remember when Jesus called Peter, he said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." Well, he wasn't calling Peter the devil, but we do know, like over in the book of Job, for instance, that is in reference to the devil. How do I know? Because the book of Job is a Hebrew poem concerning the nation of Israel going through the tribulation period. I hope to have a video that will also stem from an article I wrote several years ago concerning the book of Job. And this will be a time on earth where God will allow the devil to have complete control over planet Earth. The second thing we have to understand and realize is that not only is the devil's name not Satan, but we don't know what the devil's actual name is, nor do we know what the Antichrist's actual name is. In the Bible, we have distinctions, we have adjectives, and we have various types of descriptions concerning their character and their behavior. And I might add that this relates to very deceptive behavior, but we do not know what their personal names are. Now, over in the book of Revelation, there are a couple of beasts mentioned with the names of blasphemy written on their foreheads. And these names of blasphemy, depending on the type of translation you are utilizing, these names of blasphemy can relate to one singular name in different languages, which means it'll have different pronunciations, or it could just relate to one pronunciation of that name. So there's going to come a point in history where the literal names of both the devil and the Antichrist are revealed to the masses on planet Earth. This will be during a time frame known as the Day of the Lord. This is in regard to the Earthly Kingdom Gospel prophetic program once again resuming, where those prophetic lines will once again connect, and Hebrews through Revelation will begin to unfold on planet Earth. It is during this time frame where both the names of both the devil and the Antichrist will be revealed to the masses. Now, in a nutshell, what's going to happen prophetically is that the nation of Israel is going to accept the man of sin as their long-awaited Messiah, the one who will come in his own name. He will be the royal vassal to the devil. The devil will be the suzerain. The devil will also be on planet Earth, live and in living color at some point in time, and he will be the suzerain, and his royal vassal will be the Antichrist. The Antichrist, the world will be converted to sort of a fairy tale type setting, sort of a very colorful Alice in Wonderland, Christmas type setting, and the world will be so amazed at Israel's king, suzerain. They will go back to that type of languaging. I should say, from the ancient world, and the world is going to beg for Israel. They're going to beg for a one world government. They're going to beg, would you please, we want your king as our king. We want your king to rule us so that we can be blessed like you are blessed. And this is when the entire world is going to get stuck. This would be if you've never studied the 4 trees of Israel, from the video I keep referencing, Bible Prophecy 101, the 4 trees of Israel, you'll know that the bramble tree or the thorn tree represents the Antichrist, and it means everybody is going to get stuck. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to switch gears just for a few minutes, and I'm going to bring on the one and the only Dr. Michael Heiser, who is a Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew scholar, and he's going to explain the semantics as to why the name or the word Satan is not a personal name.
Up here in 5.6, just so that we're all on the same page of knowing what the definite article is, the definite article is the word the. Okay, it's that word that stands before a noun that makes it definite, okay, as opposed to an indefinite article like in English, a car or an apple. In English, it's the word the. Well, in Hebrew appends something to a noun to identify it as definite, and the absence of that thing would therefore make it indefinite. So what Hebrew does is it appends something in front of a noun that's made up of 3 parts. The letter He, a patak, which is this little line under the He, so you have the ha sound, and third, a strong dagesh, which is a dot in the first letter of the word. And here are some examples. Hasus is the horse, hadavar, the word, hamelech, the king. If we took the definite article off these, if we just had sus, it would be a horse, and so on and so forth. Now, when we get to guttural letters, there are 4 guttural letters in Hebrew plus resh, you won't get this dot, and I'm not going to bother taking you through that section, just so that we have a basic understanding of what the definite article is. Now, I'm going to switch to a Hebrew reference grammar. This is the leading Hebrew reference grammar in our time anyway. And I have a section of it marked out here where Juan and Moroka discuss the definite article as it pertains to proper nouns. And you'll notice the statement right here: no proper noun of person, a proper personal noun, takes the article, not even when it has the form of an adjective or a participle. The only exception to this, and it isn't really an exception, is the phrase half of the tribe of Manasseh. Here we have ha Manasseh. A literal translation would be half of the tribe that is Manasseh, would be how you would translate that very literally. So in English it would be the half tribe of Manasseh, so the would go with the half. But we don't have a proper personal name that is called the Manasseh or the Abraham. You don't have anything like that in Hebrew by rule of Hebrew grammar. We don't do that in English either. So in other words, if I could illustrate it with a PowerPoint slide, ha, the hey plus the patak with the dot, plus a noun, when you get that combination, that is not going to be a proper personal noun. There's our dot. Ha-satan, then ha-satan is not a proper personal noun. Satan occurs 27 times in 23 verses, and I want you to see something. In all the passages that you would think of as Satan in the Old Testament, Satan has the article, which means it's not a proper personal noun in any of those passages.
That sure was a great teaching, a very brief teaching, but yet a great teaching emanating from Dr. Michael Heiser. So always remember that the word Satan means adversary. And just like in the English vernacular, you would not walk up to a person with a distinction such as the general. You wouldn't walk up to them and say, "Hi, the general." You would say general, or "Hi, general," captain, sergeant, whatever that distinction is. But notice you would be using that distinction like it's their personal name, even though it is not their personal name. Go ahead and try and speed things up quite a bit. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew. The word Lucifer is a Latin word. Therefore, when the Bible was translated from Latin into English, some English translators simply used the Latin word Lucifer instead of translating the word Lucifer into the English vernacular. The word Lucifer in and of itself means bright star, splendid star, illustrious star, bright and morning star, golden star of the dawning, etc. The Hebrew word for Lucifer is Hallel. Nowhere in the ancient Hebrew vernacular was the devil ever referred to as Hallel. In the ancient Hebrew culture, there was no foreknowledge concerning an archenemy of God known as the devil. The concept of God's archenemy was introduced many centuries later by Yahushua HaMashiach, the Lord Jesus Christ. In other words, in the ancient Hebrew culture, there was no such thing as a fallen angel named Lucifer, who later became Satan. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and read from Isaiah, the 14th chapter, via the Latin Vulgate. And this is what it says. Quomodo sestadiste de caelo Lucifer qui mone oriaberis coriustu e terrain qui vulnerabis gentis. In other words, I want you to notice that all of the words are Latin words, including the word Lucifer. I'm now going to read from that same Latin Vulgate, but this time I'm going to read it with English translation. And it says this: How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, who didst rise in the morning? How art thou fallen to the earth, that didst wound the nations? Now notice how all of the words are in English except the Latin word Lucifer. let's take a quick look at some other translations. In the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, instead of Lucifer, it's been translated to the term morning star. In the American Standard Version, it says day star of the morning instead of Lucifer. In the Bishop's Bible, and in the Brenton Bible, and in the Darby Bible, and in the Douay-Rheims Bible, and the Geneva Bible, they all use the term Lucifer. In other words, they did not translate that word from Latin. They just used the Latin term Lucifer. When we get to the Jewish Publication Society Bible, it has the term day star instead of Lucifer. In the King James Version and the 1611 King James Version, they both use the term Lucifer. When we get to the literal translation of the Holy Bible, it says shining star. The Webster Bible says Lucifer. Young's literal translation says shining one. So that just goes to show that depending on which translation you're dealing with, some have actually translated the word Lucifer, others have just left it, the Latin word Lucifer, as is. Now, the name Lucifer is, as I just stated, a Latin name, but it's in reference to the planet Venus. I'll read that again. The name Lucifer is the Latin name for the planet Venus. In ancient times, planets were referred to as stars. The definition for the word Lucifer is light bringer, corresponding to the Greek name dawn bringer for the same planet. This is a Latin name for the planet Venus in its morning appearances and is often used for mythological and religious figures associated with the planet. Due to the unique movements and discontinuous appearances of the planet Venus in the sky, mythology surrounding these figures often involved a fall from the heavens to earth or the underworld. Interpretations of a similar term in the Hebrew vernacular, translated in the King James Version as Lucifer, led to a Christian tradition of applying the name Lucifer and its associated stories of a fall from heaven to Satan. Most modern scholarship regard these interpretations as questionable, as they should. Okay, now let's look at Isaiah, the 14th chapter, verses 1 through 5. Verse 1 says this: "For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob." This will happen during the 1,000-year millennial reign. Isaiah 14:2, "And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors." This too will happen during the 1,000-year millennial reign. Isaiah 14:3, "And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage in which thou was made to serve under the Antichrist. Thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, How hast the oppressor ceased, the golden city ceased? That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, How hast the oppressor ceased, the golden city ceased? The last Babylonian king, aka world emperor, will be known as the Antichrist. He will be a fallen messenger. He will be the devil's royal vassal. The Antichrist will be the serpent from the original Garden of Eden. When you read your Bible, the Garden of Eden and the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven is the exact same place. One was before it was completed, the other is after it was completed. So the messenger from the original Garden of Eden will be the Antichrist, the serpent. He was God's original ambassador who represented the earthly and supernatural heavenly connection. He was a world famous ambassador who represented the animal kingdom. And this is one of the reasons he is referred to as the beast. All right, Isaiah 14:5 says this: the Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. All right, so I'm going to read the definition of scepter from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. A scepter is a rod or mace used by a sovereign as a symbol of royal authority. And God, this is actually a prophetic scripture, the Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. So let's continue. This is going to get good here in just a little bit. That is, if you came to glean some knowledge. Okay, definition of a figure of speech: departing from the literal definition of a word or phrase in favor of using metaphoric language in order to convey an expression. Types of figures of speech are alliteration, chiasm, euphemism, I started to say hyperbole, but hyperbole, metaphor, personification, anthropomorphism, reverse personification, etc. Differences between anthropomorphism and personification. Anthropomorphism is a type of personification that gives human characteristics to any non-human entity that possesses supraliminal ideation to one degree or another, i.e. ghosts, spirits, angels, demons, animals, etc. This allows them to appear and behave as though they were human. Don't worry, that word supraliminal ideation will be explained here in just a second. Okay, so personification is the act of giving human characteristics to abstract concepts or inanimate physical objects. Anything void of conscious reasoning, aka supraliminal ideation, can be given human attributes in an allegorical typology. Examples of inanimate physical objects are things such as water, the sun, the moon, stars, vehicles, trees, flowers, furniture, buildings, thunder and lightning, electromagnetic energy, etc. Examples of anthropomorphism. Huh? So human attributes ascribed to any animal is an anthropomorphism. Okay, something else that's an anthropomorphism. The meteoric outstretched hand of God is anthropomorphic. The reason being is because no one's ever seen God in person in all of his glory. And so God has to be depicted via anthropomorphism. Isaiah 5:25 says this: therefore is the anger of the Lord kindled against his people, and he hath stretched forth his hand against them, and hath smitten them, and the hills trembled, and their carcasses were torn in the midst of the streets. For all his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. No one has ever seen God in all of his glory, yet he is described as having an outstretched hand like that of a human being. This is an anthropomorphism. Isaiah 14:26 says, this is the purpose that is purposed upon the whole earth, and this is the hand that is stretched over all nations. Again, The Lord is depicted metaphorically as having an outstretched hand like that of a human being. This is an anthropomorphism. These are writing styles. These are some of the same styles we use in our modern day literature. Isaiah 14:27, for the Lord of hosts hath purposed, and who shall disannul it? And his hand is stretched out, and who shall turn it back? Again, the Lord is depicted metaphorically as having an outstretched hand like that of a human being. This is an anthropomorphism. Other anthropomorphic scriptures to consider. I'll read them quickly. Numbers 6:25, Leviticus 20, verse 6, Isaiah 23:11, Exodus 7, verse 5, Psalms 89, verse 10, Deuteronomy 4, verse 34, Deuteronomy 5 and 15, Deuteronomy 11 and 12, Psalms 34:15, 2 Kings 19:16, Nehemiah 1 and 6, Isaiah 66:1, Exodus 20, verse 5, Isaiah 54:6, Psalm 7:11, John 1 and 1, Isaiah 55:8 through 9. Alrighty, so my friend, you have made it this far. I hope you're still awake. God bless you, my friend. Alright, so now we're going to go to some examples of personification. A talking tree is a great example of personification. My friends, if you ever encounter a talking tree, run for your life. Obadiah 1:3 says this, the pride of thy heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? The pride of thy heart has deceived thee, thou that dwelleth in the clefts of the rocks, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Now this is a figure of speech where the nation being referred to, which is Edom, is represented as an individual human being having human characteristics, i.e. a pride and a heart. So this text is creating imagery which makes this a form of personification. Obadiah 1:5, if thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? The nation as a whole, referring to Edom again, is referred to as an individual human being that will be utterly destroyed. Robbers would have at least left some gleanings. In other words, the actual destruction will be much worse than had they just simply been robbed. Nothing will remain. This is personification because the nation is personified while at the same time the text is creating vivid imagery. Obadiah 1:6, how are the things of Esau searched out by, I have in parentheses, by hostile soldiers seeking booty? How are his hidden things sought? Edom abounded in secrecy, yet even their hidden treasures would eventually be looted by foreign adversaries. Obadiah 1-7, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is no understanding in him. The nation is now being referred to as a deceived human being. So this is personification. Psalms 137:8, O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed, happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us. This is personification because a nation birthed by Babylon is referred to as an individual human being. So I hope you're starting to see these patterns that in writing styles, whether they be ancient or in modern times in movies and TV and all types of written literature, we utilize these same styles. All right, so Lamentations 1:1. How doth the city sit solitary that was full of people? How is she become as a widow? She that was great among the nations and princes among the provinces, how is she become tributary? The nation referred to as a widow makes this a form of personification. We're almost done with these scriptures, these example scriptures. Just hang in there a little bit further. Lamentations 1:2. She weepeth bitterly in the night, and her tears are on her cheeks. Among all of her lovers, she has none to comfort her. All of her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They are become as enemies. She weepeth bitterly in the night, and her tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, she has none to comfort her. All of her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They are become her enemies. The nation is referred to in a feminine vernacular with present tense human behavior, i.e. the terms weepeth bitterly, tears on her cheeks, which makes this, a form of personification. Isaiah 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Virgins in the sense of not yet being taken captive, where they would be literally and physically raped by their captors. Sit on the ground, there is no throne. O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Sit on the ground, there is no throne. O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. This is personification because the text is creating Middle Eastern imagery of the nation of Babylon personified as a queen that now becomes a slave, i.e. the term sit in the dust, there is no throne. Isaiah 14:3. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yet thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. This is personification because the nation is referred to as an individual human being, while the text is creating present tense imagery along with futuristic vivacity. Isaiah 47:5. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. This is personification because the nation is referred to as an individual human being, i.e. daughter, while the text is attempting to create present tense imagery. Two more scriptures in this section. Isaiah 52:1. Awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion, put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city, for henceforth there shall no more come into thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. A nation and a city are referred to as individual human beings, while the text is creating their futuristic brilliance among the nations. This is personification. And Isaiah 52:3, for the Lord saith the Lord. For thus saith the Lord, ye have sold yourselves for naught, and ye shall be redeemed without money. This is personification because the nation is referred to as an individual human being. In other words, unless there is human animation, a nation is nothing but an abstract concept. So here I have a picture of actually walking and talking vegetables, which is another example of personification. Personified veggies, if you will. Welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Brother Eric Nelson, and we are glad to have you with us. Today we're going to go ahead and continue on in our study where we left off concerning personification before we proceed forward and get into the heart of the matter. Welcome back, everyone.
Hey, how you doing there? Listen, couldn't help but notice you across the parking lot, and you're very attractive, and you want to go behind the Applebee's and do it, huh? You want to just go have some dirty, stupid, insane parking lot sex?
Chuck, it's me, Morty.
Yeah, 'cause we could what?
Yeah, they had me painted.
Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed.
Hey, how do you think I feel?
No, that too, but
It's not all about you, you
Morty,
know.
oh my God, what
I think
are
I
you
was
doing?
like a
Look at
birthday
you.
present for the kid or something like
Oh
that. I don't know.
my God, look at you. You're hot.
I know.
Yes, indeed, my friend. Human attributes ascribed to cars, especially talking cars, is indeed a form of personification. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with personification. We have a few more scriptures that we want to encounter, starting with Ezekiel 23, and I'm going to read these a little bit faster. So we're going to start with Ezekiel 23 down to Ezekiel, the 6th chapter. And this is what it says. And they committed lewd deeds in Egypt. They committed lewd deeds in their youth. There were their breasts pressed, and there they were first corrupted. And the names of them were Aholah, the elder, and Oholiba, her sister. And they were mine, and they bore sons and daughters. Thus were their names: Samaria is Aholah, and Jerusalem is Oholiba. Jerusalem and Samaria are referred to as individual human beings, which makes this a form of personification. Let's continue on with Ezekiel the 23:5. And Aholah played the harlot when she was mine, and she doted on her lovers, on the Assyrians, her neighbors. Samaria is here referred to as an individual human named Aholah, which makes this a form of personification. Who were clothed with blue, captains and rulers, all of them desirable young men, horsemen riding upon horses. Here Samaria is referred to as an adulterous wife who has lustful eyes for the Assyrian captains. What this is actually referring to, remember, is spiritual adultery. Samaria had lustful eyes for the Assyrian captains, rulers, and desirable young men. The text is indeed creating imagery, which makes this a form of personification. All right, so now we're going to move on to the book of Revelation, and we're going to go to Revelation 17:5, and I'm going to read a little bit faster. And it says this: and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Here Babylon is personified as a mother with harlot children, which makes this a form of personification. Now, here's an interesting saying. It says, fill your heart with wisdom, and it will be like a deep well. What an awesome statement. Wisdom is indeed God's workshop. Now, in the book of Proverbs, wisdom is indeed personified in like manner as that of the satanic ruling scepter of Isaiah 14:5. That's very important to note. I'm going to read it again. In the book of Proverbs, wisdom is indeed personified in like manner as that of the satanic ruling scepter of Isaiah 14:5. Let's see, I'm going to read quickly Proverbs 1:20 through, looks like 29 through 29. Okay, wisdom crieth without, she shuttereth her voice in the streets, she crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates, in the city she uttereth her words, saying, how long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and the fools hate knowledge. That's a mouthful. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit to you. I will make known to you my words, because I have called and ye refused. I have stretched out my hand and no man regarded. But ye have set at naught all my counsel and rejected my reproof. I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh, and desolation, and your desolation. Let me read that again. I messed that up. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They will seek me early, but they shall not find me. For they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear, which means respect, of the Lord. Proverbs 8:1. Actually, it's going to be 1 through 6. Proverbs 8:1 through 6. Does not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth on the top of the high places, by the way in the places of the paths. She crieth at the gates, and the entry of the city, at the entrance of the doors. To you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of man. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be ye of an understanding heart. Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. Okay, so in the Bible, we have scriptures where the floods and hills are personified, such as in Psalms 9, or make that Psalm 98, verse 8. In Psalm 77:16, water is personified. In Isaiah 24:23, the moon and the sun are personified. In Genesis 4:10, blood is personified. The metaphoric scepter, we are now getting into the actual heart of the matter. This is very important. The metaphoric scepter of the rulers in Isaiah 14:5 is later personified as an individual tyrant. One basic key to understanding Isaiah the 14th chapter is to understand that the staff of the wicked and the scepter of rulers represent millions of unrighteous, ungodly rulers that have needlessly caused death, tyranny, poverty, destruction, and abject hopelessness to the unnamed masses for thousands of years. Another basic key is to understand that the scepter of rulers is poetically personified in the masculine vernacular as an individual tyrant that mercilessly reigned throughout history. Isaiah 14:6, he, the royal scepter, which represents the spiritual empowerment of millions of evil human and non-human potentates throughout history. He who smote the people in wrath for thousands of years with a continual stroke. He, the ruling scepter of satanic wickedness that ruled the nations in anger, is now persecuted, and none hindereth. Why will the scepter of evil that ruled the nations in anger finally be persecuted? Because of the futuristic prophecy of Isaiah 14:5, which says this, the Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of rulers. Isaiah 14 verses 7 through 13. I'm sorry, make that 7 through 20. So Isaiah 14, 7 through 20. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yes, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon sang, since thou, the reigning scepter of satanic wickedness, art laid down, no feller is come up against us. In almost 7,000 years of human history, the world has never known perfect peace. Isaiah 14:9. Hell from beneath is moved for thee, to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It has raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. So the ruling scepter is what animated and empowered all evil rulers throughout history. Metaphorically, the evil despots in hell will be amazed at the plight of their incarnate royal scepter. Isaiah 14:10. All they shall speak and say to thee, Art thou, the power that animated us, also become weak as we? Art thou become like us? Isaiah 14:11. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. Isaiah 14:12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, aka the iniquitous royal scepter, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Isaiah 14:13. For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mountain of the congregation in the sides of the north. The satanic royal scepter personifies a spiritual avalanche of untold millions of wicked human and non-human monarchs that together have tried to usurp the authority of God Almighty for almost 7,000 years. Isaiah 14:14. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. This is referring to the personified royal scepter held by the Antichrist. Isaiah 14:15. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. The animating power behind all evil, malevolent rulers, as personified by the evil, malevolent royal scepter, will be eternally destroyed. The Antichrist will be thrown into the lake of fire. He will not accompany thousands of deceased despots in hell. See Revelation 19:20. And then later on, after the 1,000-year millennial reign, the lake of fire will be put away into its own dimension, never to be accessed again. It will be total and complete separation from God Almighty and all of his blessings. Things that you will need, such as air, comfort, rest, food. Yes, even in the spiritual realm, you will hunger and thirst. You are living in a state of unending, perpetuating death. Isaiah 14:6. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that shook the kingdoms? Remember, the satanic royal scepter is an abstract concept, poetically endowed with human characteristics. Isaiah 14:17. That made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, that opened not the house of his prisoners. Isaiah 14:18. All the kings of the nations, kings once animated by the power of the infernal royal scepter, even all of them lie in glory, everyone in his own house. Isaiah 14:19. But thou, the personified scepter of satanic subversion, art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. Isaiah 14:20. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Why will the seed of evildoers cease to be renowned? Because of the futuristic prophecy of Isaiah 14:5. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. Isaiah 14:21. Prepare slaughter for his spiritual children. Children, the Hebrew word. Let me read that over again. Isaiah 14:21. Prepare slaughter for his spiritual children. The Hebrew word for his is in the third person masculine singular. For the iniquity of their biological fathers, the Hebrew word meaning their is in third person masculine plural, that they may not rise nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. In other words, prepare slaughter for his spiritual children, for the iniquity of their biological fathers, that they may not rise nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. In other words, evil will no longer rule the earth once the Lord himself breaks the spiritual staff of the wicked, along with the satanic scepter of ungodly rulers. Isaiah 14:22, for I will arise against them, saith the Lord of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name and remnant and son and nephew, saith the Lord. Satanic governance will come to an abrupt end when spiritual Babylon falls in perpetuum forever and ever. See Revelation 14:8. Isaiah 14:23, I will also make it, referring to spiritual Babylon, a possession for the bittern and pools of water, and I will sweep it with the besom of destruction, saith the Lord of hosts. Compare that with Revelation 18:2-3. Besom of destruction is quite a significant statement as you consider the fact that the forces of evil will one day possess a supernaturally beautiful city in order to deceive billions of the willfully deceived human populace, known as spiritual Babylon. See Revelation 13:1 and Revelation 18:2. Just as the dynamism of spiritual righteousness will one day possess a supernatural beautiful city known as the New Jerusalem, aka the original Garden of Eden. See Revelation 21. Isaiah 14:24. The Lord of hosts has sworn, saying, surely as I have thought, so shall it come to pass, and as I have purposed, so shall it stand. I hope that wasn't too confusing, but basically these are writing styles from ancient times in the Bible. They did not utilize computers back then. And so what they did, they utilized writing styles that the populace back then would have been keenly aware of. Even though most of the populace back then was illiterate, these writings could be read to the masses. And just like there's a new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven in the book of Revelation, this would be the Earthly Kingdom Gospel prophetic program, not our program. We're in a program right now which has been ongoing for well over 2,000 years. We will inherit the heavenlies. Those who get saved in this program will inherit the heavenlies, which has a lot of dimensions and a lot of it's too large for the human mind to even begin to comprehend, but we will inherit the heavenlies in glorified bodies. Later on, those saved, there are different levels and degrees of salvation when the Earthly Kingdom Gospel program resumes, but one of the rewards will be the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, and also the new earth, which, if we crunch the numbers, the new earth is probably going to be 10 to 20 times larger, or even larger than that, than the current planet Earth. So there are different levels of salvation, different types of salvation, and there will be different people arriving at different places as far as their personal salvation is concerned. But the just like there's a new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven in Revelation, the forces of darkness also in Revelation will also have spiritual Babylon, which will be like their new Jerusalem, which is going to be a supernaturally beautiful city that's going to captivate planet Earth. It will be the satanic Valhalla, or the age of Aquarius, which is supposed to be their millennial reign, but it's going to get cut short. They're not going to quite make it the full 1,000 years. So we're going to go back to Isaiah 14:24. The Lord of hosts have sworn, saying, surely as I have thought, so shall it come to pass, and as I have purposed, so shall it stand. Isaiah 14:25, that I will break the Assyrian in my land, and upon my mountains tread him underfoot. Then shall his yoke depart from off of them, and his burden depart from off of their shoulders. That I will break the Assyrian in my land and upon my mountains, and tread him underfoot, then shall his yoke depart from off of them, and his burden depart from off of their shoulders. The Antichrist, aka the Assyrian, the beast, will be the last ungodly ruler to ever hold the satanic scepter of ungodliness. The Antichrist, again, being the original serpent from the Garden of Eden. Isaiah 14:26, and yes, he will be a supernatural being, and just like he was able to beguile Eve, he will easily be able to beguile and deceive the world. The world is going to get a true foretaste of this man's supernatural beguilement prowess. And as a result, there will be billions of people who will wind up on the wrong side of eternity due to their own rebellious, poor choices. Isaiah 14:26, this is the purpose that is purposed upon the whole earth, and this is the hand that is stretched over all the nations. Why is that? This guy is going to become the king of Israel, and he's going to have supernatural blessings galore with the weather patterns, with the indescribable Alice in Wonderland type of beauty. And the world is going to he's also going to have solutions to seemingly to solve the world's problems. And the world is going to be screaming for this guy to rule over them. They will say, we want to anoint you as our king. Israel will have a king because they're going to go back to the Old Testament type of languaging once the Earthly Kingdom Gospel program resumes. And the world is going to see it, and they're going to start screaming for a king. Isaiah 14:27, for the Lord of hosts has purposed, and who shall disannul it? And his hand is stretched out, and who shall turn it back? My friends, absolutely no one. Alrighty, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and post the footnotes for those of you interested in gleaning more knowledge in this capacity. I think the footnotes are excellent. It's been a few years, couple years, I guess, since I've even gone over them, but they are excellent footnotes. So stay tuned for another video concerning Ezekiel, the 28th chapter. Alrighty, my friends, thank you so much. Go check out the video, Bible Prophecy 101, the Four Trees of Israel. Head on over to BitChute.com. There are 61 videos there to bless your life. Last time I checked, I think I had about 16 some odd thousand views. I'm no longer posting on BitChute. I am I turned in my first video to be monetized on Rumble, and I'm heading over to Locals, where you can build up subscribers and you can charge those subscribers. I plan to charge, I intend to reach 1 million people at least or more. And I intend to start off charging $2 a year, if that's possible, over on Locals. In other words, I'm heading to these other bastions of free speech. Thank you so much for tuning in, my friends, and I appreciate you, and God bless. Hold on, my friend. Don't run away so fast. I have a special treat for you. I was able to locate a video that I remembered from a few years ago that does an excellent job explaining the overall nuts and bolts of the suzerain vassal treaty contract. And I have included an excerpt from that very video. Enjoy.
The Dead Sea Scroll discovery was one of the greatest discoveries of our time. I would probably argue that maybe the second greatest discovery as far as biblical application goes is the discovery of these ancient Near East treaties and what they mean for us in our understanding of Scripture. So you're going to want to have in front of you the sheet that says Suzerain Vassal Treaty. You're going to also want to have the text of Genesis 15 in front of you. We're going to spend some time in there just the way we did here in Genesis 3. And I'm going to invite out my suzerain and vassal. We have a suzerain and vassal here. that are going to help us. Okay. So, why don't you guys come and stand right here on this rug. So, okay, so a picture. There were no cameras. All right, is everybody here? Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever read Genesis 15 about dividing these animals into and smoking fire pots and blazing torches and go, what is going on? Right? How many of you ever felt that reading Genesis 15? I have for years. And today that's going to all make sense to you. So when these ancient Near East treaties were discovered through these archaeological digs, we started realizing that the way covenants were formed or treaties were formed in the ancient Near East, there was a method to it that was very familiar culturally to the Israelites. And so for them, they'd watch these treaties happen. They'd make these treaties themselves. We see references to them. We just never knew what they specifically looked like. So the whole treaty is here, and we're going to explain what it looked like in the ancient Near East. Then I'm going to explain how Genesis 15 is actually a complete reflection of this treaty. Okay, so let's look here at the beginning. In the top it says the suzerain vassal treaty. What was the suzerain? Well, the suzerain in this case, the beautiful Mark Mancini, is our suzerain. I don't like angry Mark over my shoulder. A suzerain was basically a king of a small geographic area. So he was like the guy in charge. That's why I had to have Mark do this. He was the guy in charge of that area, okay? So the suzerain is the guy in charge. The vassal is like a wandering shepherd, someone who doesn't have necessarily in his land. That's the young Tacho here. So a vassal, and what would happen is a vassal, let's say that they're traveling with their herds and they really decide they want to make a place home. So they would approach the suzerain of that particular land and say, I'm interested in becoming part of your land, and I would like to make a treaty with you in order to enter this covenant relationship and become part of your, what we could call it, your kingdom, your reign, your area of reign. And so they would form this covenant between each other. Now, when this would happen, if you look in that little blue box, it describes a lot of what this looked like. It was actually much more than a contract. It was a relationship that they were forming. They would use father-son language in these covenants. They would often change the name of the vassal because now the vassal needs to be known to be part of this suzerain's geographic area. So the changing of the name becomes a significant marker of when that covenant was entered. It was very legal, but it was also very personal. And honor was at stake. If you didn't uphold this covenant, it's like worse than bankruptcy. I mean, you were no longer respected if you didn't uphold this covenant. And so each person that enters the covenant, the suzerain and the vassal, were intended not just to hold up this covenant, but give their hearts to one another to form this relationship. So once they've agreed that, yes, we want to make this covenant together, they would go through this process. And if you see across the bottom, there's 7 steps to this treaty. The first thing that would happen is there would be an introduction. And in the introduction, you would have something like, here is Mark, suzerain of the land, entering this relationship with Tacho, the new vassal, and they would announce basically who they are, and that introduction would be the first thing that happened, their titles, names. Then their relationship would be described. Where did they get to know each other? When did the vassal come into the land? And what's the nature of their relationship now? Then the rules of the covenant would be explained. So in very specific detail, the expectation for the vassal would be explained. That usually terms like you need to love, you need to walk with, you need to serve. They would even use those kind of terms in these treaties. Remember, these are not biblical treaties. It's pretty fascinating. total loyalty was demanded. In other words, if there was a war, the vassal now bound up with this suzerain is fully expected to defend their nation. They are part of that community. What would happen next is they would now swear before their gods, the temple. They would walk in this temple area, this holy area, and even as you see in the next one, the witnesses, they would list the witnesses of who saw it, and in a lot of cases, they would even list off the foreign gods that they would worship. So in Dagon or whatever those gods were, as they witnessed this treaty, may they hold us accountable to this. Okay, so every year there would be a covenant renewal or a treaty renewal where they would go back through and remind each other of what that covenant was, a renewal of the vows. And then they would go through blessings and curses. What would happen if they uphold this covenant? And what would happen if they did not uphold? And they would go through in great detail. It's interesting when you look at the book of Deuteronomy, it's very similar to that, right? If you obey me, you'll be blessed where you live. You'll have water in your lands. Your crops will grow. If you don't, you will be cursed. And that covenant structure very much follows the ancient Near East treaty. And then lastly, an animal was slaughtered and cut in half. Half the animal was placed on one side and half was placed on the other. And the blood often was touched by both the suzerain and the vassal, symbolizing how this blood through this blood, they shared this new life. It was literally a blood covenant, okay? They would then walk together through the animal, and at the same time, they would make a statement. And we're going to have our suzerain and vassal do this. So imagine that we've now taken this heifer, we've cut it in half, we've laid one side here and one side here, our suzerain and our vassal come through, and together at the same time, they would say this.
If I do not uphold this covenant, may what happens to this animal happen to me.
You catch that? If I don't uphold this covenant, may what happened to this animal happen to me. Okay, can we thank our suzerain and our vassal? Okay, thank you. You guys can grab a seat.
Should I keep this?
No, you can wear that as long as you want to. I have no idea. How many tachos can a mark have? How many vassals can a suzerain have? I don't know. That's a good question. Don't know. Let's go to Genesis 15. Now, in light of this covenant, hang on real quick. In light of this covenant, so Abraham has seen this happen 100 times. He knows what this is all about. Genesis 15, it's all in this vein. Follows the same structure. So you're going to understand why Abraham knew exactly what was going on. Now, there were some questions. We have found these covenants. We have seen them laid out. We know exactly what they were like. And that's why I said this is to me one of the second or later greatest discoveries now for us to actually know, because this actually shows us stuff at Sinai. We understand the Sinai covenant better. We understand Deuteronomy going into the promised land better because we understand the backbone of what these covenants would look like. Okay? Not when they renewed, only when they bound. The animal was killed, they would touch the blood, it would bind them together. Yes. Okay, Genesis 15, chapter 1. Sorry, chapter 1, verse 15. I'm tired. Chapter 15, verse 1. Let me take a drink of water before I read this. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram. Notice the name, right? Abram, in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him. This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. And then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. Okay. It says in verse 6, Abraham believed the Lord, or Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. So let's look at that as that finished segment, this interaction. That's what happened. And then we start seeing the beginning of the suzerain-vassal covenant. Now notice on your sheet, what's the first thing that happens? An introduction. He says to him in verse 7, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it. The Hebrew writer's trying to get our attention. Wait a minute, didn't he already know who God was? Why is he introducing himself? Well, that's historically what would happen. When you start this covenant, you would introduce yourself and explain the history of your relationship, right? Verse 8, but Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? So the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Abram brought all these to him, cut them in half, or two, and arranged the halves opposite each other. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. Then the birds of prey came down to the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. What is happening? What is God doing here with Abram? What's he explaining to him? He's explaining the nature of their relationship and what's going to happen in this covenant. He's basically explaining, this is what's going to happen with you. Here's what's going to happen with your offspring. They're going to look like they're, enslaved for 400 years, but I'm going to rescue them. I mean, he's basically describing all the covenantal part that he's going to uphold in his faithfulness to Abram. Does that make sense? And then we see verse 17. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot and blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. Interesting. And then it just simply says, on that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram. Okay? In the normal case of a suzerain and vassal treaty, the suzerain and vassal would walk together going through. And in most cases, it was the vassal, the tacho, that made most of the vows of commitment. Now, there were vows of commitment that were made by the suzerain, things like, I promise to protect you. And if someone comes after you, they come after us. There was that fatherly protection. But most of the commitment came from the subject. I'll be faithful, I'll serve you, I'll be loyal, I'll walk with you, I'll protect the nation, all those kinds of things. Now, in this case, where is Abram? He's asleep over on the side. He's got this foreign view, like he's looking over at these animals lined up and cut in two. And what's passing between the animals? A smoking firepot and a blazing torch, both representing deity. Those in the ancient Near East represented God. The smoke, the fire, and you notice even later on, how did God show where he was residing at the tabernacle? Through smoke and fire, right? How did you know where to follow? Through smoke and fire. And so what we have happening is we have Abram sitting here as a bystander who cut the animals in half, but he's watching God walk through the animals. And what's that mean? God is basically saying to Abram, if this covenant does not get upheld, may what happened to these animals happen to me. Abram is watching God take full responsibility for the covenant. God is taking full responsibility for this covenant. And what do we see happen over the next 400 years? Is it dependent on Abram? Is it dependent on the Israelites' behavior? Is it dependent on anything from the vassals? No. As a matter of fact, the entire thing is on God. God upholds the covenant because God is faithful to what he promises. Isn't that amazing? Now, when you look at Genesis chapter 17, we see kind of and we aren't going to have time to dig into this here this morning, but you see this second iteration of the covenant. Now, you see connections. Abram's name is changed from Abram to Avraham, Abraham, the father of the nations. We see a blood covenant that is entered where all they have to do is circumcise themselves. There's the blood covenant. And by circumcising themselves, they are part of this faithful community to God, and God is going to uphold his covenant in it. So that's the connection to the suzerain vassal treaty.